In today's show, it's a mailbag episode answering listener questions about what if the Blazers land Cooper Flagg, the importance of depth in the playoffs, and plus, Portland's path to a title. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter Mike Richmond. You're listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making this show your first listen, coming at you each and every weekday, Monday through Friday. So make it a part of your daily routine. Make it your first listen. Tell your friends to do the same as Locked On Blazers, your team every day. In today's program, it's a mailbag episode, a good old-fashioned Mailbag Monday. Shout out to my longtime listeners who remember that the halcyon days of when we used to always do mailbags on Monday until I realized that I couldn't be beholden to the structure and host a show about an NBA team that plays so dang much with so much dang news. So instead, we're getting back to it just because at random. This is more of a special delivery mailbag episode. We're going to talk about the importance of depth in the playoffs. We're going to talk about a what-if scenario if the Blazers were to indeed win the lottery and draft Cooper Flagg, what it means for the franchise. And we're going to talk about the Blazers' path to a championship and whether they are charting that right now. If you want to be involved, all these questions I received in my email inbox. The email is LockedOnBlazersPod. That's Locked On Blazers, the name of the podcast. P-O-D, the structure of this thing. LockedOnBlazersPod@gmail.com. That's the best place to reach me, period. Social media is you're not gonna find me there often enough to track me down, and it's the best place to have civil and normal conversations with me as an adult human. LockedOnBlazersPod@gmail.com. Let's get into the program. This first question comes from Evan, who sent this today. Did Evan's email put this episode over the top? Was I going to do something else until Evan sent me this email? I probably was. Thank you, Evan. Evan writes, I'm watching Minnesota versus Los Angeles. That's Wolves Lakers in parentheses, as if I didn't know who the mascots were. Wolves Lakers. And Minnesota's depth has been a huge reason they're winning this series. Is the NBA headed to a spot where depth is more important than star talent? And if that's the case, should that give us collective pronoun? Evan in parentheses notes that it's collective pronoun. Evan, a longtime listener, I appreciate you. Collective pronoun, more confidence. Should that give us more confidence in the type of roster the Blazers are building? This is a good question. I like it. It's an interesting question. I think a lot of fellow listeners, at least in my inbox, have pointed to the Rockets as potentially like a model for the Blazers to follow, like a deep, really athletic, high-level defensive team that wins a bunch of games. The Rockets won 52 games this year, but they don't have that top-end A1, like Alperen Şengün made an all-star team, but Alperen Şengün, he's 22, he's very good, but watch him play. He doesn't scream like, this dude's an all-star, right? He doesn't. He screams, this guy's really talented. But he's not very clearly one of the, 15 or 20 best players in the NBA. He is merely a good player on a very good team. And they've got a bunch of them. And that's kind of their path, is they get a bunch of good players. And that's why they were so good in the regular season and then all of those things. And I think the Wolves, in this series against the Lakers, have also shown the value of depth, but not being a super deep team. The Wolves didn't go very deep in their regular season rotation. Chris Finch was pretty hesitant to play any of the youngsters. Terrence Shannon Jr. and Rob Dillingham eventually got a little bit of time, but that wasn't what Finchie was doing. They were there. They play a pretty tight rotation, in fact, during the regular season. And I don't think that they've certainly those youngsters haven't played, but it's not like they've played this expansive big rotation in the playoffs. Nickeil Alexander-Walker doesn't play very much because he hasn't played very well, but they're certainly deeper than the Lakers. And so the answer to this question is in general, yes, right? I think depth matters, and I think if Oklahoma City wins the championship, you'll be like, wow, it's really important to have depth. But it's also just really important to have good players. And I think there's a couple different series that kind of push back, either push or pull in the idea that depth is really important. Let's start with Minnesota and LA. The Lakers are just not deep enough to be good in the playoffs. I think that's what we've learned watching them. They've lost 2 close games in Minnesota where they've run out of gas down the stretch. They just... in games 3 and game 4, and game 3 was the final 4 minutes, and game 4 it was the entire overtime where they asked so much of Luka Doncic and so much of LeBron James, and LeBron is freaking 40 years old playing his 22nd NBA season. It's those dudes just don't look like they have it after playing 36 minutes and getting down to the 8-minute mark. Both of those guys played 45 minutes tonight, and it's not just the minutes, it's the incredible usage. Like, Luka Doncic is getting double teamed at 40 feet every time he crosses midcourt. Like, it's a lot of work, it's a lot of offensive responsibility, it's a lot of weight to carry, and they've looked tired at the end of games. In game 3 they just didn't run any offense, they were tired, and in game 4 they just didn't make the plays they needed to make. Sure, like, some things went against them. There was a Luka Doncic fell over at midcourt trying to go across half court. They got a call overturned in game 4 that would have, they would have had the ball back down 1, but instead they had the ball back down 3 because of a Wolves challenge that went their way. Like, sure, whatever. But also, like, they can't play a center. They don't have a center. And the Wolves, in fact, their center, Rudy Gobert, hasn't been particularly good. So they've just gone the other way. It's not even like the Wolves don't even have a bunch of depth. They just happen to have Naz Reid, who's a good player. It helps to have 6 to 7 to hopefully 8 like high-level playable guys in the playoffs, for sure. That depth matters. But I think what the Lakers show you is, like, if you have, like, 2 and parts of others, like, Austin Reeves hasn't been very good. Rui's been up and down. Dorian Finney-Smith is fine, but he's not going to win you a game on his own with the rest of the roster construction such that it is, although he's a good role player. Like, but they literally played 0 minutes with a traditional center in the second half. It's like, you can't have no depth, and I think that's what Lakers show you. And the Wolves, just a little bit of depth, a little bit of ability to change shapes helps. Speaking of those Rockets I mentioned, though, is sort of the Blazers' vision that some folks have shared, and Evan didn't mention in this particular email what others have when they've emailed me. Like, I think the Rockets have more talent, like, in terms of deeper. They have more good players than the Warriors. Let me try to say this another way. Golden State has fewer good players than Houston. But Houston doesn't have the dude, so it doesn't matter. Like, Golden State wins game 3 despite no Jimmy Butler in the lineup because Steph Curry's magnificence, because he had 36 and 9 dimes, because he was terrifying, because they could use him off the ball and scare folks and have Draymond initiate. And Draymond's obviously really good, albeit he was really good in game 3, but albeit annoying. But, like, it's the Rockets have more playable parts. They just don't have that top-end talent. And so they're losing their series despite their incredible depth because they don't have that A1 star. Minnesota's probably winning their series because, one, their A1 star, Anthony Edwards, was great, and they have a little bit of depth to, like, overcome some of their shortcomings, where the Lakers just, like, have 5 guys they can play, hope it works. Like, that's what they're down, that's what they're with. Like, our center will be a 6'7" Dorian Finney-Smith or Jared Vanderbilt or whatever. Like, best of luck to us. But, like, Houston has, they can size up and size down. They can play gigantic. They aren't going super deep into their bench by any means, but they do have, like, 8 players that are decent into the playoff rotation. There's no, like, absolute duds. They've had some dud games from Jalen Green and from Fred VanVleet, but, like, they got players. They just don't have the guy to push them over the top. And Golden State has the guy. And then I look at Denver, right? Like, the Clippers are old. But they're a deeper team for sure. Their bench is better than Denver's. And Denver wins game 4, albeit on a minor miracle that I think Aaron Gordon's hand was on the ball, but that's not what they called. Denver gets to celebrate 2-2. That's fun. But Denver basically has no depth. They basically have nothing. Even before Russell Westbrook got hurt, and Westbrook did not play in game 4, like, even before he got hurt, they didn't, like, their depth wasn't any good. And in game 4 that they won, all 5 starters played north of 42 minutes, and no one on the bench cracked the 13-minute mark. Peyton Watson played 12 minutes and 45 seconds. Like, they have nothing. They're getting nothing off that bench. Nothing. And they're 2-2 in a series because Nikola Jokic is incredible, because the top end talent, because they are, gritty, and maybe they got a little lucky, but like, it would have been, if the ball doesn't go in it would have been overtime. They would have still had an opportunity to win the game, and they would have the best player in the world. That would be pretty helpful. So, like, I think the truth is sometimes depth matters. And certainly if you have a way more good players like Oklahoma City might and like Boston did last year when they were fully healthy, it's like, wow, their top 8 is so freaking good. Like, what do you even do with that, right? And I think that really matters. That depth matters. But the idea that there's like this, we're trending towards a world in which depth is more important than star power, I just don't think I've seen that in the playoffs. It has been true here and there to varying degrees where depth has been more valuable, or the ability to have a couple other options has been more valuable. But I think in general, what you're seeing is what we always see, is that like it starts at the top. If your best guy is great, then it trickles down from there. You can, if your worst guy is unplayable, or like you like literally can't play any minutes from Jackson Hayes, that's a problem too. And then the top end doesn't matter because the bottom end is so detrimental. So I think that in that way, depth matters. You probably need 7 guys who can play in the playoffs. You probably need, it's like, to win. But if you don't have like one of the best guys, like, you're just not beating Nikola Jokic. You're not beating Anthony Edwards as good as he was in Game 4. He was phenomenal. You're not beating Steph Curry in the playoffs. You still need that talent, but depth is very valuable in and of itself, because you need both. If you're going to win a championship, you're going to need both. If you're going to win a playoff round, you might be able to sneak by with one of them. Let's talk about the Blazers getting a little lucky. We talked about luck in the a little bit here in respect to the Denver Nuggets. Let's talk about luck when it comes to ping pong balls and Cooper Flagg. Join me in that second segment, won't ya? We're going to play a little hypothetical game courtesy of listener Jonathan. Before we do that, though, I want to tell you that today's program is brought to you by Prize Picks. We got the playoffs rolling along in the NBA and the NHL, basketball, hockey. They're in the postseason, and there's no better time to turn your sports knowledge into real cash than with Prize Picks. Right now, the top destination for daily fantasy sports action. Prize Picks makes it simple. You just pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, and you're in. You can even mix and match players across basketball, hockey, baseball, and more for your shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash. During the basketball playoffs, they're going to have games every day. So if you want to go more on Nikola Jokic points or more on, Peyton Pritchard 3-pointers, you're going to go ahead and find that. Or if you want to hit the ice, you can do that as well. I don't know enough about the NHL to give you some examples there, but you, dear listener, can, because Prize Picks makes it easy. You can build a lineup in under 60 seconds, and with discounts like Taco Tuesday and Flex Friday promos, there's even more value each week. And when you win, you get paid fast, sometimes in as little as 15 minutes. So download that app today and use the code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. You don't even have to win. Prize Picks will give you $50 to play with just for playing your first $5 lineup, but you got to use that code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play that first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. All right, let's keep rolling. It's a special delivery mailbag coming at you on a Monday. This next one comes from listener Jonathan, longtime listener of the program. Jonathan writes, the Evan email I kind of culled, I edited it down. I'm going to read you most of this email that Jonathan sent me. It is a question about Cooper Flagg and a what if. Follow me. Jonathan dares to dream. Maybe you will too. Let's just say, and I quote, let's just say for fun and dream's sake that the Blazers fall into the number 1 slot in the draft lottery and they do nothing other than add Cooper Flagg to the roster this summer. They also convinced Jeremy Grant that coming off the bench is a good thing. Stay with me for a second. If the top 11 players looked like this, assuming the young guys level up a bit in the offseason, are they, no collective pronoun, are they a playoff lock? And Jonathan's lineup is as follows. Anthony Simons, Toumani Camara, Danny Avdia, Cooper Flagg, DeAndre Ayton in your starting lineup. Off the bench, Scoot Henderson, Shaedon Sharpe, Jeremy Grant, and Donovan Clingan, with the deep bench of Matisse Thybulle and Rob Williams. That's not OKC or Boston deep, Jonathan writes, but could Flagg alone cause an inflection point for this team that unlocks the roster, or do you think they'll just end up with a lot of guys that are unhappy that aren't starting? Okay, this is good stuff. One, it's fun to dream, right? It's fun to dream. Might only be a 3.7% chance that the Blazers win the lottery, but if you won't entertain it now, at the end of April, you lack the necessary whimsy to survive in this cold, painful world. As a bit of a pessimist myself, I recognize that 3.7% is a small number, but I also recognize that the ability to dream and be hopeful like listener Jonathan is what keeps this thing moving. I need y'all. I need y'all to be hopeful because if nothing else, it's a reason to keep pushing on each day and press and play on however you listen to this podcast. So with Cooper Flagg, let's start here. With Cooper Flagg, this is following a theme this summer where I've talked about how the Blazers could probably do nothing and find themselves like competitive for a play-in spot next year. Like if they do other stuff, it would change their trajectory. But like I think they proved that like, yeah, they could probably do nothing, have guys improve a little bit, and be like in the mix to win half their games. And if they're in the mix to win half their games, they're in probably, although the play-in spot has kind of moved around a little bit. But if you're talking like 10th, yeah, sure. Half your games, you're in the mix for 10th, definitely. In any case, would there be a playoff if they did nothing else and just added Cooper Flagg? Would there be a playoff lock? I can't say lock. I cannot say lock. I can't. Just because I look at the West and like, who's gonna really fade? In theory, I think the Clippers could really fade because they're just older. And there's so much uncertainty with Kawhi. But they won 50 games this year, and he missed the first 55 of them, like, and they're pretty good. And James Harden was pretty darn good. And like, obviously he's older too. And there's a world in which the Clippers are just older and then take a step back. Right. But I don't think they're going to be awful. I wouldn't guess them being awful. The other teams that are like currently in the playoff mix that could take a dip, I thought it would be the Lakers, but they were freaking gifted Luka Doncic. Seems unfair. And if you have Luka, you're probably going to be pretty competitive. That's just a good guess, pretty competitive. The teams that are out of the playoffs, it's hard to know what Dallas will be. Hard to figure out what Dallas will be, but in theory, a relatively competitive basketball team. Who knows with the Kings? We can just drop them. I'm not worried about them. But who knows? They might be good. They might be mediocre. They might totally blow it up. They might chase the play-in. You think the Pelicans will probably be a little better, but probably not dramatically. The Spurs are likely to be better. Phoenix is a really, really hard one to know. They weren't very good at all this year, but they're certainly not going to run back the same roster next year, so let's leave them out as well. So that would leave you with basically the same, we're dropping Sacramento. So we're talking about like probably 9 teams that I feel like are going to be right there in the mix again. And if there's 9 that are in the mix, you can't call the Blazers a lock. It wouldn't shock me. I think Cooper Flagg is a pretty good connective player, even if he doesn't hit immediately as an offensive player. I think he's a versatile defensive player. He can really pass. Dude can really pass, particularly at his size, but I think he can just really pass, period, for a basketball player. He's really athletic and really smart, and that's a darn good combo. Skilled, fluid athlete who also reads the floor really well. Like, I think he's going to be really good. He went to the wrong college. That's his own choice. Once he gets to the league, I won't hold it against him, but I will laugh if he plays on certain teams and they lose. But, freaking Jason Tatum won the NBA title, so now what am I even going to do? In any case, I wouldn't call him a lock. But boy, would they be good. Because it's kind of fit their dream, right? You'd still be able to play gigantic all the time. In this world, you'd still play with that big wings in the starting lineup. You'd still be a little light on shooting, but I think that would be a problem. Probably pretty bad on offense yet again. But yeah, like this puts you maybe not a lock for the 2026 playoffs, but in such an incredible position moving forward. But the last part of this question, I think, is the interesting one. If they don't do anything and they just get Cooper Flagg, it's like this is a projection which Scoot Henderson comes off the bench and Shaedon Sharpe comes off the bench. Or if you say, hey, well, Shea has to start, do you not start number 1 overall pick Cooper Flagg on a team that won 37 games, whatever it was, a year ago, 36 games a year ago? That doesn't really make sense. So do you move Tumani to the bench? Well, that's your best, that's your best point of attack defender. That kind of changes things. Okay, do you move Denny to the bench? He was probably your best player last year. And then that's all assuming that Jeremy Grant is on the bench and cool with it and not like rocking the boat. The problem with doing nothing is that there is a little bit of like this crowd confusion. Cooper Flagg is great confusion to have. That's the best confusion you could possibly have. The best thing that you could have are really good players that you have to figure out how to get on the floor. That's the value of depth that I talked about in that first segment. Hence, I put these questions in this order. That's valuable, right? That's that you're building towards a seven man rotation that can play in the playoffs. But it would be, I think running back a season in which both Shea and Scoot come off the bench can lead you to a place where it's weird, particularly Shaedon Sharpe coming up, like entering the final year of his rookie deal. Not having a clean path for Donovan Clingan to like earn big minutes. Like, you maybe don't have to say, oh, he's going to play 32 minutes every night, but a way that he can't be rewarded with 28 if DeAndre Ayton is healthy in the lineup. That's not ideal, I guess. I guess you could say DC earns it. And I think, like, obviously the Jeremy Grant thing is a problem because I don't think you want to come off the bench to begin with. So the last part of this question is, do you end up with a lot of guys that are unhappy about that they aren't starting? Yeah, but you're going to end up with that anywhere if you lose. The key to all of this and the key to fix a lot of egos and anger and stuff is just be so good, right? Like to be so consistently good and win so much that it's easy to point to guys and say, but we're winning. Oh, I want the ball more. I want to shoot more, but we're winning. Oh, I deserve to start it, but we're winning. If you can't do that, like if you're a bad or mediocre basketball team, then that's when it gets messy. It can get messy if you win, but winning is a salve for this type of thing. And even in a world that Cooper Flagg isn't on the roster, but they just like don't make a ton of moves this summer, you're going to bump up against it with like, okay, now there's a young core that is not only like, we think they should play, et cetera, but like has earned the right to get on the court and play minutes with like successful stretches of basketball. That's the balance that they have to figure out at some point. Incredible though. When they do win the lottery, it'll be a wonderful problem for the Blazers to try to solve. Speaking of trying to solve, I got a question to close the show about whether the Blazers are building towards a championship and whether the front office currently in charge is doing exactly that. Let's tackle that one to close the show. Join me there, won't ya? First, though, I want to tell you that today's program brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are upon us, and FanDuel is giving new customers incredible ways to get on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if that bet wins. So, whether you want to make a really, really bet that you're very, very confident in with your first $5 bet in order on a path to get your $250 in bonus bets, or you want to get real wild and you want to, put together a 3-pointer, steals, assists, rebounds, and first half spread, you can get in all of that. You can even combine your player props, live player prop bets into a same game parlay for a big chance to win. So if you miss tip off, you can still get real creative with it. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com. Claim your $250 in bonus bets today. All right. Still a pass first point guard. Still Mike Richmond. You're still listening to Locked On Blazers. Final question of the show. If you want to get involved in a future mailbag episode, email me, lockedonblazerspod@gmail.com. Now, some of these questions, I will not answer that quickly. I think this last question I've had in the inbox in a couple different varieties over the course of 6 weeks or something like that. And that's sometimes I'm even slower. Sometimes you get an Evan question. Send me this email at like 3 p.m. I'm recording this at about 9 p.m. But sometimes it takes a while. But in any case, if you do want to be involved in the show, that's the place to do it, lockedonblazerspod@gmail.com. This last question of the program comes from listener Riley, who asks, are the Blazers a serious organization, and can we trust this front office to build towards a championship? I'm going to ignore the first part. I think the term unserious and serious in sports is this sort of like loaded descriptor that says so much more about the person asking it than the person applying it. Like when you watch a team in the second round of the playoffs and you say, well, the Pacers are unserious. Get out of here. It's such a it is a word that is much it's like internet parlance, whatever, common slang, and I'm not dismissing the use of slang. I love slang. Listen to the freaking program. But like I think in terms of what I'm doing here and like trying to discuss the path of the Blazers, like determining whether they're serious or unserious is an unserious way to go about it. And I, not a particularly serious person, at least don't care for that idiom. But I think the second part of this question is really good. Can we trust this front office to build towards a championship? Because I think that's what the Blazers did, right? When they extended Joe Cronin and extended Chauncey Billups, they said, we trust you to build towards a championship. If it wasn't explicit, and I don't remember exactly what the press release said. It's implicit. If you have the job in the league the job is to build towards a championship, right? Right? I don't think every team does that. I do not think every team in the NBA builds towards a championship. I think there are some teams that do not chase championship equity. That's just true. Some teams only chase that, right? And their goals are to only be one of the inner circle teams, and if they aren't, they're failures, right? And then they'll are maybe comfortable spending more cycles outside of the inner circle in order to get into it. And there's some teams that are totally cool with being okay. There are some teams that are totally comfortable with being decent. The Indiana Pacers come to mind. That's why I use them as an unserious team. It's like they come to mind as a team that is like maybe not deeply committed to like the championship level chase, because they're not going to spend outrageous sums of money to put together a championship level team. But they've been successful forever. They're just like Eastern Conference beasts. They win all the time, and they're a good, fun young team this year. Can we trust this front office to build towards a championship? I think I've been more than clear on this program. I've been very straightforward and about my preferences about how the Blazers should have handled this season. I thought they chased too many wins. I think they pursued a goal that is not actually a reward in earning 10th in the West and making the play-in. Like that is not actually a reward. The first time you do it, it's cool. The second time you do it, it's a curse. Ask the Kings and the Hawks. Like it is. I think the Blazers were, in my personal opinion, I think the Blazers were a little bit early in trying to put together a team that won 38 games. I think they could have, we're talking like if they had lost 3 to 4 more times this year, they would be 10% more likely at a top 4 pick. They don't have to be the worst team in the league, but it's just like, it felt like they weren't always aligned in what was their best large-scale outcome, particularly in light of how they have treated the last few years. And for those of you who say that, you have to win building habits, well, how were they able to overcome the last 3 years and win basketball games this year? It's almost like those years had no bleep effect on this year, because that doesn't actually matter. But whatever. So I think that they probably didn't take the most pragmatic steps to build a championship roster this year just by asset collection, right? They're likely to have a worse pick in the draft. But they have more talent than I thought they did. Like I underestimated how talented they were. I have no doubt about it. That is for sure true. So are they building towards a championship? It seems like this particular year they took a positive move in terms of talent, and a lateral, if not negative, I'd say both lateral and then later negative move in asset acquisition, right? They didn't sweeten the pot at all. They didn't make any trades at the trade deadline that would sweeten their sort of asset future path to getting better. Either, getting players you can trade or getting picks that can turn into players or turn into trades or blah, blah, blah. They stood pat of the trade deadline because the players they had to trade weren't particularly coveted, and also maybe because they were winning a bunch of games and there was not a push to go in that direction when they got to the trade deadline. But they found good basketball players. Denny's a good basketball player. Tumani is a good basketball player. I think the young guys took steps forward. So right now, I would say we don't know. The actual answer to this question is we don't know. But this is a good summer to judge it. It really is. Because they're going to preach patience. Every time we hear Joe Cronin talk from here on out, he's going to talk about how they feel like they can be patient. Why'd they win 30? Why'd they chase all those wins if they felt like they could be patient? Isn't being patient losing in the NBA? Like, what are we doing? They're going to talk about being patient. And if they are indeed patient, and that looks like running back the same roster, that's not going to feel like a team that's pursuing a championship. But if they are patient, and that means trading some players that could be contributors for, on-court contributors for either draft picks or maybe lesser players to allow some youngsters to step into bigger minute roles, that might look like patience. That might be exactly what patience is, right? That's understanding, hey, we're getting better. Our players our base of talent is pretty good, but we're just not there yet. We need to be patient. We need to not if we set our goal is to win 41 games, so help us God, they might be able to do that, right? But patience doesn't look like chasing 41 wins necessarily. Patience couldn't mean building to 41 wins, but those it's the how. How do they do it? That's what we'll know. Because they're going to tell us that they're patient and they're comfortable and they like what they have and they don't want to rush into stuff. That's what they're going to say. They're going to say that a million times ad nauseum. Every time you hear one Joe Cronin talk, that's what he's going to say. He's going to talk like twice before the season starts, maybe 3 times publicly, max, absolute max. So he's going to talk at the draft and he may or may not speak at Summer League. I doubt it, but maybe someone will get a story with him. Maybe it'll be me. I'm not going to go to Vegas, but Joe, if you're listening, you can come on the podcast anytime. Yeah, you know how to get in contact with me. You've got people. You can speak a bunch on the show. But I think this summer is the test of the building towards the championship, because chasing being decent this year, it might be, that might be a move that works, right? I've misjudged their talent before. I might misjudge it again. But I think if they're building towards the championship, this summer will show their willingness and their vision in executing what patience looks like. I'm not advocating that they suck forever. I'm just advocating that they be realistic about where they are and who their best players are and what that looks like and what their path is to winning with them. Because if they think you can win a championship with Denny Avdia as your best player and Shaden Sharp as your second best player and Tumani Kamara as your second, third best player, whatever, then yeah, hit the gas. Hit the gas, see what happens. It's time. And maybe I'll be wrong, right? But if they don't, how they treat this summer will show you where they are in terms of what they think the path is. And if they make moves with a longer tail, they might get worse, but it might show you a little bit clearer about building towards a championship than if they make they either do stand pat or make minor changes and try to kind of. My worry about their success this year is that they don't self-assess and they say we're pretty good. There's no way we'll ever lose more than, we won 36 games. Now the graph goes up forever. Next year, 41, the year after that, 45, then 52 in perpetuity, right? And it's hard to do that. It's hard it is not skipping steps is important, but the steps, judging when you've actually taken that step is pretty hard. So to answer your question, Riley, I don't know. I think we will know this summer. I think this summer is the vision, right? This summer is the vision because you've got DeAndre Ayton on an expiring contract. You've got Anthony Simons on an expiring contract. You got Matisse Thybulle and Rob Williams. You've got these guys that are entering the final year here. One way or another, they're walking in 2026, or you're paying them, right? And paying them would be its own telling move. Trading them and what you trade for them, they've reached an inflection point where action or inaction will tell us. Will they get a big slice of old championship equity pie? No, probably not. They're probably several steps away from doing that, but they will give us a clear vision of where this thing is headed. That is going to do it for today's program. We got more shows this week, 4 of them. I guess this is your 5th or 1st, depending on how you want to count it. It's your 1st. Monday's program, we'll do 4 more of these the rest of the week. We do 5 a week, wherever you get podcasts, also on YouTube, all off season long until the middle of stinking August. And then you'll still get 3 shows a week because that's how Locked On Blazers does it. That's how the Locked On Podcast Network does it. Go tell your friends about the program and come back for tomorrow's show. I appreciate you listening. I'll talk to you soon.